Hey, everybody, and welcome to Boss Talks. I'm your host, Evan Happel with Community Boss, and we have a great episode for you today. Haley Graham, she is with Navigate Community Management. She's the Chief People Officer with them and has been in the community management space, meaning that is HOAs and condos, single-family homes. They help manage those spaces, a little bit different than my usual guests in the multifamily space, but super important ones. And we appreciate them because they are a customer of ours when it comes to who we serve with our software. So, and actually, she is a customer of ours. So I didn't even know that. I met her and I was like starting to talk. And she's like, "Oh yeah, I know Community Boss." I'm like, "Wait, what?" I should do more research, I guess. I need to get better at my job. But no, she's great. Really appreciate her and looking forward to our conversation. But before we do, again, I'm with Community Boss. We have a great solution for you when it comes to managing your parking, your amenities, and mapping. So if you have any needs there in managing that physical space, maybe generate some revenue or just making a better experience for your residents and owners, let me know. Guest parking can be a big headache, especially in HOA world. So if you need to manage that better, let me know and we'll have a conversation. But today it's about Haley. So let's get to it. All right, Haley, how's it going?
Going well. Thanks, Evan, for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah.
I'm just excited to talk about leadership, talk about people.
Yeah.
I'm a people person. That's what I'm passionate about. I'm passionate about leadership, finding the right places for people to be great at what they do, to learn and to grow into who the best versions of themselves can be. It's an interesting industry. No one, thinks to themselves when they're a little girl, I want to grow up and become a community association manager and manage HOAs and condos.
Yeah.
So, you kind of fall into this industry. So you have to make the best out of it when you are in it.
Yes.
So we do the best with what we have, and creating a great welcoming atmosphere at Navigate is what I'm here to do and what I love to do.
Yeah. And that's fantastic. And I can't wait to learn a little bit more about your career path. But before we get there, there's a few questions I like to ask to kind of get it warmed up and things going. First off, and you should have some answers to this because you do use our software, and that's not even the point of the question. But my question is, when it comes to parking, are there any stories or I guess opinions or anecdotes around parking that you could share with our listeners?
Yeah, I have a few. Parking is probably the most contentious situations we have in condos. I don't know how many people know this, but condo developers, as much as we love them, they keep us in business. They don't develop condos with always the most amount of parking spaces needed. It's usually about, for a 2-bedroom condo, it's about 1.5 spaces are developed
Makes
for,
sense.
yeah, because why would a two adult family household need 2 vehicles? You'd need 1.5 vehicles. I don't know why they would do that. So
Totally.
there's never ever enough parking, and you'd never have a guest over, right? So parking is always super contentious.
Yeah.
And then you never have a truck, or you never have a vendor that comes over. So pre-parking boss, and one of the reasons, or community boss, at the time when we've had it long enough, when it was in its original phase, which we had
Parking boss is still good.
yeah. When we had it just for parking, or it was called Parking Boss, we brought it on because of this reason. We had carport spaces mislabeled by one number, and there was a major homeowner to homeowner dispute over carport spaces and how they were labeled and how who was parking in what spot, to the point where a homeowner was trying to get another one towed, and it was all the way brought up to the point of wanting to get the state involved for a human rights violation, and
Oh my.
the board elected, said, let's bring in a really inclusive, great situation where we can solve this from the beginning. Enter community boss. And we have not had those such problems since, because we can have colored labels for residents, for owners, for guests. And you can just pull it all up on the software and say who's where are they supposed to be. And it's so nice, and it's so easy,
Yeah.
and wonderful. So
Oh, good.
it's really saved the day more than once. And
That's
it keeps
great.
us from having to contact lawyers, which is always wonderful.
Well, and kind of speak to the, I guess, the nuance of your world, because
Mhm.
a thing that exists within condos, these are owned by people.
Yeah.
Therefore, the parking spaces are deeded.
Yeah.
So can you explain that? Because I don't think most people realize that.
Yeah. So unlike an apartment, which the apartment is owned by one entity and then every unit is leased, in a condo building, every unit is owned by a separate person. And then whether the original owner or the owner at the time lives in that unit, and then they own the parking spots that come with that unit. So when you get your documents for that unit, your unit comes with 1.5 parking spots, or it usually comes with a parking spot, and then you have an optional parking spot you can buy, or whatever it says.
Yeah.
But you are given a parking spot, and then it is labeled your 4A condo comes with carport 1A, or however they say. So you are given an actual parking spot. And then if you decide to lease your unit, when you decide to move into another home or single family home, however you decide to do it, that parking spot is given to your tenant. So you have that parking spot as yours. It's leased in with that unit. So the parking spot stays with the unit. That is how it is enforced. So it can get a little bit also contentious when you have owners that are there and that have been there for 25 years. And then you have owners that have moved on and are leasing their units. And you have people who are renters, and they say, oh, the renters are not doing what they're supposed to be doing. So again, when you have a consistent and even enforcement of parking, it can just really help everybody out.
Yes.
Everybody's treated uniformly, which is what you need in a situation like that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for explaining that, because it is a nuance of the HOA condo world that is a little different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's great. All right. So thanks for sharing your story. And then the next question I like to ask is, when it comes to music, songs, or artists, what is a song that you like to, on the regular, listen to, that kind of help you get motivated, get in the groove of work or whatever it is?
Yeah. Well, there's been a lot of songs over the years. Recently, I mean, as you can tell, Taylor Swift is behind me. I flew all the way to Sweden to see her.
Oh, wow.
So recently it's been I Can Do It With a Broken Heart by Taylor Swift. It's kind of like a perfect community association anthem, because sometimes, you're having one of those days. It's just really tough, but you got to just buck up and do it anyway. Typically we're not taking phone calls of people where they're just calling us to tell us how happy they are. But so sometimes it's tough, but we're doing it anyway, and we're trying to help them, and we're getting over on the other side. I think it also can tandem leading people in a post-pandemic world is like, things can be challenging. Yeah. But we want to make it better, and we want to, get hyped and get on the other side of it. So yeah, that's probably my most recent anthem.
All right. Nice. I like it. All right. And then finally, your caffeine choice. What's your caffeinated beverage of choice? What do you always go to?
Great question. Well, I have two. I am on the daily, I am a tea drinker. I drink tea every day. But Coffee wise, I will never turn down a vanilla latte or a brown sugar shake and espresso. That's,
Okay.
it's a sugar, it's like the sugar coffee. I'm
Yeah.
not too pretentious with it. If you're going to put coffee and sugar together, I'll pretty much take it on.
Well, and the brown sugar shaken espresso, I enjoy it too. It's not as sweet as some of the other ones,
Hmm.
and it actually has less calories.
Yeah, it's
So,
not too bad.
yeah, yeah. So, I actually was looking at the menu. I was like, that's like half the calories.
Mhm.
Okay,
And then I'm
let's
like,
do that.
upgrade it to a venti.
There you go. So now we're getting more caffeine and still less calories. So
Exactly.
no, that's a good drink. I typically like those or cold brew, things like
Mhm.
that. Those
Yeah.
are if
On
I'm
a
going to get a drink.
yeah. On a hot day, I don't think there's anything better than iced coffee
Yeah,
of some
for
sort.
sure. All right. Well, thank you for answering those questions.
Yeah.
Now we're going to transition to all things Haley, and I
Awesome.
would love to get a better picture of like how you uh, got into this space of HOA management. I know it wasn't a straight line,
Yeah.
and it's actually interesting where you came from. So yeah, I'd love to just learn more about your story.
Yeah. So, the year was 2020. I'm sure we can all imagine. I can't believe we're just coming up on that 5-year anniversary of that 2 weeks to flatten the curve, situation.
Yes.
And, I was working at a nonprofit. I was really enjoying my job. Um, was working for previously a boss that I really enjoyed working for. I learned a lot about teamwork and leadership and leading people. And nonprofit work is really bucket filling work. It's stuff that you do because you love it, not because you make money.
Mhm.
And I was passionate about it, and I worked with wonderful people that I'm still dear friends with to this day, and I count as my best friends. Um, However, it had changed. Bosses moved on, and the pandemic had changed, and we couldn't serve the community in the same way that we had previous. And the mission had started to change in what we were doing. And I found myself, not feeling like we were accomplishing what we had been accomplishing before. So, when those things happen, you start searching LinkedIn and you're looking at different options. And this position as community manager popped up on LinkedIn, and it, kind of just bullet pointed. It was like, do you have any um, experience with board meetings? I was like, well, I've presented in front of a budget in front of a board, and hey, we have no money. I've done that before. Do you have experience in this and experience in that? And it's like, I kind of loosely met the qualifications. And I applied on a whim, just like I had applied to several other jobs that I had interviewed for, but I didn't really feel called to. Um, and I went in for an initial Zoom interview, and I met my boss, Nicholas Marin, who had a really great conversation with, and he kind of talked to me more about what the job is and what community management is, because I honestly had no real clue that this was even a job, um,
Yeah.
what the world was. And I explained to him what I do and what I thought I could bring to what the work was. Um, and I was really interested in it. I had a second interview, and I thought that I could bring a lot of my experience to the table. And I thought I could make it into what I thought would be a positive experience for what Navigate didn't really have at the time. And I could bring something awesome in my personality, and you know, bring a lot to it. So the rest is kind of history, and I've been there ever since. So again, like, nobody really wakes up and say, I want to be a community association manager when they grow up. You kind of
Yeah.
find your way there. And I started just as a portfolio manager, and it's kind of been, leveling up, leveling up, leveling up. And I'm now the chief people officer. I've started as community association manager. I led a small team. I led a little bit of a larger team as a director, and then I lead the people side of things now.
Yeah, that's awesome. And
Yeah.
and fairly quickly, really. I mean, yeah, which is awesome. So what is it about Navigate that you've come to appreciate?
Yeah, my favorite thing about Navigate, and one thing I really, really appreciate about Nicholas, is that our entire team is that we let people be who they are, and everybody works a little bit differently. And I think it's important to allow people their individuality and to not press people into boxes. You know, this is an industry that it's very apparent when work is not getting done. You hear from people. This
Yeah,
is the thing with HOAs and condos and dealing with owners is this is their investment. They live there or they own it, and this
yeah,
matters to them. This is the money that they're paying into their investment. So if you are not doing the things that you need to be doing, you hear from them. So if you're not working, if the manager is not working, you'll hear about it.
hmm,
So for on our side as leaders, I think it's important that we can let our employees and let people at Navigate, and Nicholas has always done this, let us be who we are, let us work how we work. There are people who, just for example, manage their inbox. They want to check their inbox from the oldest email to the newest. They manage it from the top down. There are people who bucket everything and triage most important to least important. Everybody approaches things differently. We're not saying that this is the absolute you know way you have to do every single thing. We have company standards, we have our best practices in the way we want, but we also have, we know that people are who they are, and they need to approach things in the way that they need to approach it to do their best job.
yeah. No, I think that's very accurate. I mean, to say there's only one way to do work is really
Mhm.
I mean, whether it's because you guys are also all remote, right?
Yeah, we're 100% remote. Yeah, we
Yeah.
do. We all get to work from home, which is wonderful. I love it. My commute's short, get to walk down the
Hmm.
hall.
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, so it works. It works a lot for us. I think it's also been remote work. I think has been criticized in a lot of ways. But I think it has also been wonderful to see because it's opened up this great part of the workforce, which is women re-entering the workforce that we haven't really been able to tap into, because people can run their kids to school and come and work, and they can go to the kids science fair, and they can flex their time, and that's important, whereas they're not dealing with a 2-hour commute in the middle of the day to be able to do that. And it's
Yeah.
important. We are an employee first company, and we take a lot of pride in that.
Yeah. Well, and we're similar in that regard. We're remote and very flexible.
Mhm.
If you need to take care of things personally, it's okay. Uh, all it's asked of people is to do your work. Like
Yeah,
how you do your work doesn't really matter. Like
exactly.
um, as long as it's done well, and it's also you have to consider if you have meetings and things like
Mhm.
that. But as long as you work with your own schedule and their schedule and it lines up, I mean, what's to
Right.
say you don't run your kid to whatever and come back? Like you're
Mhm.
doing your work. And I've always found it interesting when some companies feel like they own a person and they control every aspect of like from 9 to 5, like we
Right.
own you.
Right. And I'm like, I'm I did my turn as a babysitter when I was a teenager, and I wasn't great at it, and I don't want to do it again.
All
So I
right.
don't, that's not the business that we're in, and we hire grown-ups, and we want to trust them as adults to make that they're working
Yeah.
and that they do that work. So
Yeah. And there's obviously certain jobs that that dynamic doesn't work super
of
well,
course, yeah,
but when it can work, why
yeah.
not?
Yeah, exactly. Like we're not doing spine surgery over here at Navigate.
Yeah. So, do you have any examples, maybe of your own or people that work for you, that this is played out in a really nice way?
Yeah. I would say, for myself, I have a child, and being able to a few years ago, she had um, a major dental procedure, and it would if I had worked at my previous job where I was going into work, and it would have required PTO, taking time off, doing all of that. I would have had to take time off. I would have had to, take the day, be at home with her for 2 days, and, sitting there staring at her. Now I can flex my time. I'm still home with her, taking care of her, but I still can work. I'm not taking PTO. She's can, be in the next room watching whatever TV she's watching, getting still taken care of, but everybody wins
Right.
and nobody's having to take time. And then in a second thing, a flex, we have two amazing employees that have re-entered the workforce after staying home with their young children, and wanted to come back working, that are amazing managers. But part of their hesitancy on coming back into work was, how am I going to be able to drop my kids off at a random time at 9:30 in the morning, get my kids from school at 3:30, and I still really want to be heavily involved in the PTA, which is what I was doing. And we can allow that to happen, and they flex their time. Sometimes they're working a little bit later in the evening, sometimes they get up a little bit earlier, and they both do that. I can't imagine Navigate without them. They are wonderful at what they do. Their communities love them. They're very hard workers. But sometimes a traditional workplace would not allow that. Or if they have anybody who's had young children know that once they enter kindergarten, it's like they're getting sick like every 3 weeks. And so if
Yeah.
they have to be home for a couple of days, like, somebody can be home and nobody's having to take time off.
Yeah.
It can be very flexible.
Yeah. Well, and the nature of HOAs is you're going to have board meetings at night and stuff too. So
Exactly.
they're, you being able to, okay, I'll work a little during the day. I know I'm going to have to go to a meeting later anyway. So take a
Mhm.
break, make dinner, and then go to the board meeting or whatever,
100%. Yeah.
it kind of, because if you had to like work continuous, from
Right.
not from 10 to 7 at night, well, that means it's
Right.
eating up the rest of your life.
Exactly. And I don't think we get the best out of people when we kind of demand that kind of stringent attitude. I don't think
Hmm.
that I don't think that works for the modern person. It's We all know how expensive things are. It's hard to live on single income. Like, I think that we have to evolve and be more flexible. And I know that for as leaders and as people someone who employs other people, I know that it is scary to let go of control.
Yeah.
So something I talk about a lot is work on what your foundations are when you're hiring people. What do you want? Hire people that you feel like you are going to build trust with.
Hmm.
If you are not going to be able to build trust with someone from the beginning, probably don't hire them. I know that sometimes it can feel desperate, because you need a body and you need to hire people, but you have to get better at hiring. That's on you as a leader. That's not on
Hmm.
them as an employee. That's
Yeah.
unfair. I feel like
Yeah.
we can set people up for failure sometimes.
Yeah. And I mean, there's still the need to, you know, make decisions on people after hiring them that, oh, they're not keeping up with their work.
Yeah.
And I mean, you can offer flexibility, but they still have to work, right? Like they got to do the job.
Yeah,
It's not a
absolutely.
charity.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
have your measurables, you know, your measurable standards,
right.
and feedback is a gift. Give
Yeah.
them that measurable feedback in a kind way often, um,
Right.
so that they know where they stand, you know. Don't
Yeah.
put them on the iceberg and push them out and say, "Here you go." And then one day they all of a sudden the rug is pulled out and they're like, "Well, I had no idea I was not doing a good job."
Yeah. And how do you, when it comes to community managers for you guys,
Mhm.
how does the billing work? Do you have set number of hours per client? Because if a community manager is over, this is where it gets different than like multifamily too. You guys
Right.
are usually over multiple versus one community.
Right. So we have all of our managers are portfolio managers. So it really is going to be dependent on what the contract states and what level of contract that community is under. So it's all laid out in what their contract. They could have X number of meetings, or you know, you know, involvement laid out in what their contract says, and then the manager is going to work on it based on that. However, emails and stuff are kind of always included. You know,
Yeah.
we try to make the portfolios based on a standard level of busy, you know,
Mm,
or how hectic we think that a community is going to be. We're not going to put a bunch of really busy communities all in one portfolio,
yeah.
but it's all dictated by the contract.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, some HOAs can be needy.
Oh yeah, yeah, they can. And then really, what that it's that part is dictated by who are your board members.
Yeah.
You know, how did you know, have you come off are you recently retired from some really busy workforce and you became a board member and you're really amped up to like whip your HOA into shape? You're probably going to be a really busy board who wants to accomplish a lot.
Hmm.
Then there are board members who are like pro board members. They've been board members for 10 years. They know how to do it. They have a standard procedure in which they operate, and they know what they're doing, and they have kind of like, you know, easy way in which they operate, and they know what they want out of a manager, and you know, it's it's pretty standard.
Yeah. Yeah, I know it's always an interesting dynamic because we get involved in board meetings and stuff when it
Mhm.
comes to presenting the product, and so they have to go to those late meetings and
Mhm.
present to the whole board, and then they have to present it to the whole
Yeah,
community and all the owners, and they got to vote on it.
yeah. And I think we've had community boss come to a few meetings with our boards before, like, hey, can you come and answer a few particulars for
Yeah,
us? Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and we're happy to do it, but there are some boards that are wild.
Oh yeah, and then they will ask some of like the really nitty gritty questions that I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know how to answer that.
Yeah, yeah. No, there's some times where our salespeople on the HOA side, they'll have
Mhm.
stories. Yeah, it's always fun.
Yeah.
Um, well, thanks for kind of diving into the culture of your guys' company. It's cool how you guys approach it, and
Mhm.
it definitely seems like an obvious reason why you've stuck with them and been able to grow within it too.
Yeah.
So the other thing that you brought up was just the power of relationships
Mhm.
within your world and also just the workplace. I know recently, and this has to be somewhat tied to it, that
Mhm.
you guys won some awards
Yeah.
and had to do with a little bit of the involvement within the industry, I would assume. So I'd love to touch on that too, kind of tied to it.
Yeah. So we had a really great year. We won Management Company of the Year for WSCAI. So that was a big one for us. I won committee chair of the year for the social committee. Shout out to my social committee peeps. And community that I manage, Eastbridge COA, won community of the year. So we had a big year. But yeah, so I chair the social committee. Like I said, I love people. I love that aspect of everything. A few things that I can say: relationships are very important to me within Navigate and outside of Navigate. And one thing that I know that is hard is that people can view their competition as the enemy. But for me, our competitors are allies to me. They're important people because, number one, everything is an HOA now in Washington. There's a lot of business for everyone. Of course, I want Navigate to succeed. That's my priority. But there's a lot of really great managers everywhere. A lot of the people who have mentored me and have helped me and who have lifted me up are wonderful people at other management companies that I have served on committees with, or I have served, I have presented with at conferences at CA Day and other things like that. We have really, really great people. And through those connections, they have recognized the things that Navigate has been able to do that has been different. So we were able to be nominated from a company outside of Navigate. You can't nominate your own company for Management Company of the Year. So that was really huge for us. And it's through relationship building that you're able to, when you need advice on something that maybe you haven't faced before, you're able to ask questions or, grab lunch with and talk, or you face something challenging, or you get, you're referred to, your company's referred to because you made a really great impression. It's like, oh, you should contact Navigate because I think they would be a better fit for you than maybe us because they can serve you in the way that you're looking for. And we do that the same for other companies too. Hey, we can't serve you in the way that you're needing, but maybe someone else might. And our business partners as well. So relationships can really take you a long way. And I know that, post-pandemic, people really got in their introvert ways. Everybody's like, and listen, I like to be on my couch with my Nintendo Switch too. So I hear you, but I really implore people to invest in other people, to have those conversations, and not maybe in the same sense as like the networking, like not knowing about people at all, but really like knowing people and making a relationship with them and getting to know them and using your resources and being a resource for other people, and not viewing them as like, what are they going to need from me, but actually being happy to support other people. And, I think there's a real lack of community in a lot of industries, and we can make it for ourselves if we try, and be there for other people.
Yeah. And I mean, just think of it selfishly too, like beyond it just being good business practice.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in need of a job, if you've never been a good competitor in the sense of you've been kind, right, they probably don't want to hire you.
Yeah. 100%. I also like to think of it like sports. Like, everybody who's watched, I'm a big sports fan. So if you've ever watched a football game or a sporting event, they all shake hands at the end of the game.
Oh yeah. They hug.
They hug, they love each other, they're hyping each other up. The teams that don't make the Super Bowl, a lot of them will go watch the Super Bowl. Like, people are fans of the game and what they play and what they do. And that is who I want to be. I want to be the person that shakes hands and hugs. I want to make it to the Super Bowl. I want to win the Super Bowl.
Right.
Like, that's who I want to be. I want to be the MVP, but I also want to be hugging and cheering on the people who make it there as well.
Yeah.
That's important. I don't want to be, you know, Tom Brady who didn't shake hands with so and so, you know, on the field. That's not who I'm trying to be. No offense, Tom Brady fans.
Maybe some offense. I don't
Maybe a little bit.
know.
No
He's
shade,
not
no
playing
shade, maybe a
anymore.
little
It's fine.
bit.
Oh man. Yeah. No, that's a good analogy though, because it's like there a lot of these industries, you know, like HOAs included and
Mhm.
CAI, it's like it's not that big. So, you know, if you burn bridges or are a bad competitor, like
Mhm.
word spreads to everybody.
And fast. People will talk about something that happened pre me in the industry. They'll be like 5 years ago, so and so did so and so. And it's like, I don't want that to ever happen. Number one, I don't work like that. But two, it's like, you just got to make sure that everything's staying above board and you're being a great person. Because,
Yeah.
like I said, there is business out there for everybody.
Yep.
And I want to go about our business ethically and kindly. And do it the right way.
Yeah. And I didn't even think that you guys knew each other, but of course you know each other. Kristen Ledbetter, she was actually on Boss Talks like over a year ago, and she, you know, she had to add, we can all play nice in the sandbox. Were you guys on the same committee together, or?
We weren't, but she is one of the aforementioned people who I can call as a mentor in this industry who always lifts people up. And she's exactly right. That's
Yeah.
I can definitely look to her who has that mantra, who always speaks with kindness and has that who leads with that mindset for sure.
Yeah. I don't think you're seeing the comments. If you go upper right, hit comments, you'll see these. She also called you Queen Haley in the house.
Oh, thanks.
I've seen a few people call you Queen. Why is everybody calling you Queen?
Oh, in our internal chat, I'll say thanks, Queen, or hey, Queen, can you do this for me? Uh,
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. That's funny. All right. Well, yeah, thanks for sharing about that. And then like inside your workplace,
Mhm.
how do you guys approach relationship? Because sometimes people are like, you're just my boss. I don't want to cross, you know, whatever. So
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think that strong boundaries are important. Like you have to know when to employ those boundaries for sure. Like
yeah.
great that's great advice, but I also want to know the people who are working with me. I want to know that if they are having a hard time,
Mm,
I cannot necessarily solve that problem with them, but I want to show them compassion and care.
yeah.
I'm You always have to apply that compassion and care uniformly. It's
Hmm.
not it's not about playing favorites, it's not about having someone that you like better, but it's about knowing that someone is having a challenging time in their life and showing them compassion and care and knowing about when the timing is right to have sometimes a tough conversation. Sometimes things cannot be avoided, but applying care and compassion uniformly, you know, I want to know, if we have an employee's their dog, I want to know that her dog's name is Harley and that her dog is her greatest passion in her life. And I can say, how's Harley doing today? Did you have a nice walk with him this morning? And, that's great. We can know that about her, and then that makes her feel wonderful and great and known. To be
Hmm.
known is to be loved, and I love that sentiment. To know that, you know we have employee that has, a busy afternoon because their kids are playing soccer. How did the soccer game go this weekend? I'm not asking very deep and super intimate questions, but I'm knowing people and getting to know them so that we can build a rapport and have a relationship and break the ice and have great conversation so it's not so icy and cold.
Right.
So reason why, like I said, I have Taylor Swift behind me. people can know something about me. Boundaries are important, but getting to know people is important too.
Yeah.
Um, so I think building relationships on small things, knowing that, someone loves to, go to travel to the beach every summer. The big beach trip is their trip. I hope you have a great time, knowing that someone has a wedding coming up. Small
Yeah.
things can make a big difference because it makes people feel comfortable and known when they're coming to work, and not just like they're a number in a giant system. I don't want anybody to feel like they're just like they don't matter here at Navigate, because everybody matters here.
Yeah. Well, and I think to add to that, there there's something to be said for knowing about those things, and then when people take time off, you can be encouraging that they can freely take time off. They don't need to
Yeah.
like feel like they have to work the whole time they're taking time off. Like,
Yeah. Enjoy your time.
right.
Yes. Your time
Yeah.
is your time. I'm very much the person, please delete your email app off your phone. Delete that. Do not make sure that, like, I don't want people to bother you while you are gone. That is your time to enjoy your, fun in, whatever you're doing. 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is so hard. The deleting the app. Like I do it and then I like for some reason I put it back on my phone and then like why did I do that? And then I
Mhm.
delete it again.
I know. My very best friend she says she has work FOMO.
Uh-huh.
She just wants to know. She's like, I just want to know what's going on over there. Like, what's happening?
Yeah, it's like, but why?
Yeah.
Just yeah, it's so hard to like the one thing about working from home is the separation, right?
Yep.
Like learning to have your personal boundaries,
Yes.
because it
Yeah.
can be kind of like you work all the time.
Right. When we do get together, because we will get together for on-sites, the first like hour, everybody is like, ah, we're all in person. And we're
I
all like,
know.
it's like everyone is like, it's like the first day of school, like when we haven't
Yeah.
seen each other all summer. Like we just
Yeah.
can't contain ourselves. But I think the wonderful thing is like I'm so lucky. I really like everybody I work with. And that's a great feeling.
Mm. Yeah,
It
it
doesn't
is.
happen all the time.
No, it doesn't. I've had a few different jobs, and there's definitely times where I've had challenging people. Uh,
Absolutely.
so yeah, it's but I mean, I've learned a lot from all those different situations. So
Mhm.
it's kind of part of life.
Yeah, sometimes you
Um,
learn the most in those situations, I think.
yeah. Well, one thing that you did mention, we're talking about the community management space and your workspace and like the relationships formed and stuff. But there's also just the world we live in.
Mhm.
And you are a person that loves to travel and experience other cultures and glean things from that. So what are some places you've gone, and like what are some lessons you've learned in your travels?
Yeah. So I think I'm at 25 different countries and counting.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I was trying to make it to all continents before I'm 40, but I don't think that's going to happen. Can't quite get to Antarctica without quite the
Oh wow.
that's quite the trek.
Yeah.
I don't know that I'm going to be able to get there. Um, However, I'm gonna try. Um, so a lot of things I think that we can learn from just from other cultures. Number one is that we are in our little microcosm of the Pacific Northwest are not the
Hmm.
only culture. We're
Yeah.
not the only way of doing things. And then there's a lot of different ways of looking at things. I think probably one of the best eye-opening experiences I have two. One was going to Japan. If you want to actually look at organization on a top level, Japan is the most organized country, and everybody just follows the rules.
Interesting.
It is like an HOA manager's dream. Like, it is, yeah. So everyone, they have a mindset. It is part of like Shintoism, where they view society as a whole before the person. So they look at the collective over the individual. And I really try to, I took from that as looking at leadership as, what can I do for the collective over me? Because sometimes there are decisions that we're faced with that could really benefit me, but they're not going to benefit the collective. And so I really always pump the brakes and say, what is this going to do for everyone versus what does it just do for me? And I try to make sure that it's not a decision that's going to come and benefit just me, that it will benefit the collective. And that was probably the number one thing that I learned from just seeing that, because it takes everyone. It does take the collective to be great. And then in the inverse of that, a culture that is probably completely opposite. I spent time in Sri Lanka. I went there for a wedding, and it is the opposite of Japan, where there's no lanes in the road.
Yeah.
People drive where they want to drive. They do what they need to do. They get from one point to another. And I think one thing that I really learned from that is, like, sometimes you just have to get to where you're going. You just have to dig in, and you just have to make it to point B and put your head down and get there. Like, they are very determined. They're very determined to reach their goals and to get what they need from whatever the situation may be. And I really appreciated how they approached whatever the goal was. Like I said, we were there for a wedding, so there was a lot of wedding planning going on. And it was like, if something needed to happen, they were going to make it happen. It was like, oh, I don't like that XYZ. Okay, well, we're going to change it. And then the next day it was changed. It was like okay, this needs to happen, we're going to do it. And it was like, there was not a lot of like process talked about. So sometimes I think we can over talk about, well, how are we going to do it? You know, we have meetings to talk about process, to have another meeting. And can be such a time waster when it's like, we have all been in those meetings where it's like, this could have been an email, or we could have just done it. And I think there's a time and a place for coming up with a process, coming up with a workflow, coming up with all of these things. But then there is a time where we could have just done it. And it's already been completed by now. And that would have been really great. So I think in that situation, we would have already done it. And I learned a lot from that culture, that sometimes you just got to make it happen, man. And I like that. And I think the last thing, and I want to bring one more into it, is from the Scandinavians. So I spent my favorite place I've ever been is Copenhagen. And is the place that if I ever disappear, that's where you'll find me, is in Copenhagen on a canal eating a pastry somewhere. And that is just, take a moment, take some time. In Copenhagen, they work on average 29 hours a week. You'll see people outside, whether it's winter or summer. They're getting cozy. They have a whole word for sitting down with a cup of coffee and getting cozy. In Stockholm, in Stockholm, they have a word for the art of the coffee break. It's having a coffee with a friend, and without working. It's called fika. And something I've learned from that is just take a minute. Scandinavians love taking a break with a coffee and enjoying a friend, their surroundings. Something that's important. And I like to tell people, when I'm getting a message that I'm really struggling or I'm really frustrated, maybe you should take a break. Take a break,
Yeah.
take time, take the afternoon. Probably what you're going to be dealing with tomorrow or later is not going to be the same issue when you are going to reapproach it later. You're probably going to have a solution, or you're going to feel different about it, or it's not going to be as hard or as hurtful. But you're going to have a different perspective, almost guaranteed, when you can take a break. So we could all take a page from the Scandinavians and just get cozy, get some coffee, take a break, take a coffee break with a friend, have a pastry.
And it's called a fika?
Fika, Fika. It's like
Okay.
the art of the coffee break.
All right. After this, I'm going to go have me a fika.
Yeah, there you go.
No, that's cool.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing those. Yeah, I think there is a lot to learn from other cultures, and to be reminded that people are living differently all over the place. And
Mhm.
just kind of like you shared in the beginning about workplace, and there isn't a right way to work.
Mhm.
I mean, there's also not a right way to live.
100%.
There's a
Yeah,
lot of different cultures. There's a lot of different people, and
100%.
they're all
Yeah,
doing their own thing out there. Let's be
yeah.
serious.
And I think that that's something that we should really take in as we start to um as we start getting messages or emails, is that everybody that is emailing us or talking to us, they're all coming from a different place. I don't know what happened to them today or last week or last night.
Yeah.
I don't know what, everybody has a different story. Everybody is going through something different. I don't know what people's paths are. Things can be challenging. Just because I popped out of bed and I had a great day today doesn't mean that everybody else did. And it's not an excuse. I'm not saying that people have a right to beat up on their HOA manager, because sometimes they do that rather than putting their ire in the right places. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying that it's correct, but sometimes it can ease a little bit of the frustration that we get, pointed our way. And sometimes it's just nice to remember that it's not our fault. It's not our burden to bear. And, everybody has a different story that we need to
Mhm.
consider. And all we can do is do our best job.
Right. That is true.
Mm-hmm.
You can only control yourself, really.
100%.
Be your best self is probably the best thing we can all do.
Exactly.
Well, I
Exactly.
do appreciate you sharing all these stories and just your perspective. It's great to hear it. It's great to be reminded of the ways we can approach people with a little bit more understanding and um, empathy. To actually think of people as people instead of just cogs in a wheel and expecting work out of them, and that's all we want.
Yeah, exactly. I appreciate you having me on and let me talk about all this mushy gushy soft skills type of stuff. I know
No, it's all good.
it's not X's and O's and numbers, but I think it's valuable and it's important, and sometimes it's kind of lost in the metrics and the KPIs of it all.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it is different than last week. I was talking about Wi-Fi, I think.
You can
So
do it all, Evan. Multifaceted.
yeah, no, it's all good. No, I appreciate it. And I like having a variety of guests. So I do appreciate you bringing this to the table.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So just like Haley jumped on Boss Talks and was the guest and the boss of the week, you too can be a guest. So if you're in the HOA world, if you're watching right now and you have something to share with other people, you're the boss of what you're doing. You don't have to be the chief people officer. You don't have to be the CEO or president. You can be a community manager. You can be somebody that's on the front lines serving communities, and you have great things to share too. So I'd love to hear that story and have it shared with other people. So reach out to me if you want to be on the show, and we'll make it happen. But thanks for watching today. Thank you again, Haley, for being on, and we'll see you guys later.
Bye. Thank you.